Hello folks, I realized that in the studio tour there were a few things I forgot to mention about my recording setup. So take this as a bonus add-on to the studio tour where I'm speaking a little bit more in depth about the recording setup, what monitors I'm using, what headphones I'm using, and what kind of other software I'm using. So you might have noticed that since the last video of the studio tour, I've added a extender for the Behringer XTouch. And I was debating myself whether it's a good idea or not to do this. But I figured after a while that, yeah, because I always work with multiple tracks, it's much easier to simply have it at the touch of your hand. So, and the cool thing is, so these two are connected via USB, and they have their own power supply. So there actually is a 220 volt connection going into them. So there is no like wall connectors or anything, but pretty sturdy power supplies in there. And so now what I can do by simply touching a fader on here, it will switch some groups here, and if I touch a fader over here, then again I get the other channels. And I might as well just, if I click on one, you see that now the green one is selected. Obviously if I go further down, then you see there is that one selected. It's pretty handy and has all the displays for the different channel names. The only problem with that is that they're hard to read. So I think they really meant these to be lower on your desk so that you can actually read the ones, the displays. So you always basically have to lean over and see what they say. But I rarely use them anyway. I just click on a channel in Logic, and then anyway I see where the fader is. So that's for the XTouch Extender. What I'm also using, and I didn't mention that last time, I'm using the Mackie Big Knob, and that's a really easy way to switch between two audio inputs and two speakers. So what I'm doing here, I can switch between the focal Alpha 65 speakers, which are my main monitor speakers, and I can switch to the new Sonic ones, which are really kind of crappy notebook speakers. And obviously I do this to figure out whether what I'm mixing actually can be consumed over various devices. So you get kind of tricked into believing your mix is just perfect if you always listen through the speakers, the expensive monitor speakers, and then you might find out that, oh, it really sounds like crap on an iPhone, right? And I'm not talking about mastering. I'm talking about, and that's a fundamental belief I have. You need to get the mix right for all the different devices before you even give your track to mastering. And as I'm not mastering myself, I always let someone else master, because if you master your own music, you tend to listen at the wrong things. Whereas if a mastering engineer is doing it, it's much easier. I use a service which is available through CD Baby, which I use for publishing. And I think it's about $45 per track or something. But it's worth the while, because I find myself when I'm mastering, it just takes me ages because I want to get it perfect. And it's the $45 are just worth my while here. I also listen to the tracks when I'm mixing on, as I said, the rubbish speakers. Then I also listen to them on my Sonos hi-fi system, as well as a Google Assistant, and through various other devices. And to do that, I use the track, I bounce it, and I put it on SoundCloud, which is a really cool service if you haven't heard of it. And then in SoundCloud, obviously on the Sonos, I can access SoundCloud. I can access it through the Google Assistant and through the iPhone, obviously. And that gives me a better feel of how my music is sounding in these various environments. And another important thing I'm also doing through the big knob is to switch to mono. And that's another trick I have learned, that actually you should mix your tracks in mono, listening in mono, I mean. Because, I mean, face it, most of people out there will listen to your music on an iPhone, and not necessarily with earbuds, but it just listen on an iPhone. And rarely people turn it sideways to get a stereo image. So they probably just listen to it like the iPhone is, and that's mono. So if you're mixing in mono and it sounds good, then it will sound good in stereo as well. Right, that's an important thing, because on mono you really hear that certain instruments blank out other instruments in the mix, and you might turn one of them down more or bring it up a little bit. And so that's what I use the big knob for. I love it to bits, use it all the time, and obviously it's a volume control as well. For headphones, and yes, I also use headphones for mixing. I use the Audio-Technica, forgot already what they're named. They are the M50X, and they're basically headphones. They're made for mixing, and they're really good. I put different earpieces here, which are more comfy than the original ones. These are more like a velvet feel, makes them nicer to wear. Very good headphones, can really recommend them. Now the thing is, when you listen through the monitor speakers and then you're listening through headphones, obviously they're not neutral, right, in terms of what they do to the sound. And this is where another piece of software comes in, which is the Sonarworks, which I use to calibrate the equipment I'm having. So the Sonarworks pack really comes with a microphone, a measuring microphone, a really good measuring microphone. And what you do when you go through the process of measuring your room, you go through the room with the microphone to certain areas, and then the Sonarworks reference 4, it's called, figures out what your room does to the signal, as well as what the speakers are doing for the signal. And then it applies a correction curve, which in other words means that your speakers in the setting you're in sounds as neutral as possible. Right? And for mixing, you want to have a kind of a neutral sound. The cool thing is that the reference 4 also comes with many ready-made calibration curves for headphones, because obviously it's difficult to calibrate a headphone yourself. So thankfully they include more and more calibration settings for headphones with the software, and I can simply switch here between the curves I need. So this is when I'm doing listening through the Audio-Technica headphones, and this is what I use when I'm listening to through the speakers. And this really helps me to have a similar sound regardless whether I'm using headphones because I don't want to disturb my neighbors or my wife or the cats, or whether I'm using the focal when I'm alone or when I just don't care about other people. Now, a good listening loudness is 80 decibels. Again, I learned that from a very well-known sound engineer. And so what I do is when I start mixing, I really use the bass and the bass drums and the rest of the drums, obviously. And I just solo them and I crank up the volume so that with those instruments, I get to about 80 decibels. Decibels A is that, obviously. And then you can bring in the other instruments and kind of get kind of the right feeling. And 80 decibels is about where, if you're above that, you should wear ear protection, right? If it's too low, if the volume is too low, it's also not good because you might not hear nuances. Then it's better to use a headphone indeed. Yes, and I have obviously a MIDI keyboard down here. It really doesn't matter what kind of MIDI keyboard you use. And it's just if I use plugins or if I'm recording one of my many synthesizers and I don't want to sit at the synthesizer to play, but rather play from here and fit it easier into the mix than running back and forward between the mixing table and the synthesizers, because they're all connected through MIDI as long as they have MIDI, and so that makes it a bit more easy. Yeah, so this is really what I forgot to show you last time, and I hope that was interesting for you. And stay tuned for more videos to come on this channel. I know already I'm going to make a video about two new instruments I got over the course of the last few weeks, which I didn't feature in the studio tour. One of them I will be actually getting pretty soon. And I've also found a place for my modular. You remember when I spoke about the modular system a few weeks ago, that I kind of didn't have space for the Roland bit of the modular. I fixed that now, so I have a new setup where I have like the Behringer System 55 together with the Roland system, still in separate cases, but near enough together to be able to work comfortably with them. Right, so you see there's a lot of things coming soon, and new family members, obviously, new keyboards which have arrived or will arrive soon. I'm going to feature, and I'm looking forward to see you all on this channel, and until then, Sund on, my friends.